Supreme Court got this completely wrong. But no matter how much we hate the decision or no matter how much we disagree with it, the adult entertainment industry and all of your amazing listeners need to adapt.
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode. The Supreme Court just delivered a blow to the adult industry that can change the way we run our businesses, protect our content, and access legal adult material online, nationwide. This isn't just about Texas. It's about free speech, privacy, and whether adult creators will be able to exist without surrendering their identities, their audiences, or their rights. And there's no one better to help us break it all down than Corey Silverstein, one of the most respected attorneys in adults and someone who's been fighting on the front lines of these legal battles for nearly 2 decades. In today's conversation, we are digging into what the SCOTUS ruling really means, what creators should be doing right now, and also how to stay prepared as more states follow Texas's lead. This episode is not fear-mongering. This is your legal reality check. It affects every creator, whether you're running a solo clip store or you're on one of the biggest fan platforms in the game. So I'm putting this out here because I think it's really important, I think it's timely, and I think we need to get it in front of as many creators as humanly possible, because staying informed is step one in doing anything about this. So, Corey, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be back and be part of this discussion.
As you should, Corey. No, I'm just kidding. How are you? How are you feeling after all of this? I know you're in a shitstorm over there, more or less.
Yeah, it's I would say tired is probably the best word I could use. Since Friday, it's basically been meeting after meeting, hour after hour. We had to work through. We kept the office open Saturday and Sunday to deal with all the phone calls and people concerned and media requests and so forth. So it's been, I would call it a very busy couple of days.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so I want people listening in to have a really clear grasp and understanding of your direct role in fighting this policy. So can you explain for a little bit, like, that you were on this case, that you were fighting this fight, so people really understand?
Yes, in this particular instance, I came in to represent the Woodhill Freedom Foundation and also the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Foundation, in support of what was the Free Speech Coalition's position to challenge Texas's law. I submitted a brief on behalf of Woodhill EFF. God, it feels like forever ago now, but it was way back when, and now, unfortunately, we got the decision that I was not anticipating and not hoping for is probably the nicest way to say it.
Yeah, and so I've spoken on this topic a million times. I've really tried to inform creators as much as I can. You know, we put out this video on our YouTube channel for age verification some time ago, and it's actually one of our most successful videos. It got 45, I think, thousand views up until now, which is huge for our tiny channel. And we thought that the more people we could get to watch that video, the clearer the information would be about why this is not useful policy, how it could be so damaging, not just for creators, but for free speech and just for privacy rights. And we really tried to inform as many people as possible. But the more I see timelines, when that Supreme Court decision came out, no one was talking about this topic in it, like, immediately in my own timelines. And the people that were like the usual suspects that were also really outspoken about it, like myself. So for people that don't know what we're talking about, can you just summarize what we went to court for and why that was bad policy, just to kind of get them all up to date?
Sure. I'm going to do it as quick as I can so that I don't turn this into a law school class, because it'll put everyone here to sleep and me too. But ultimately, the short end of it is Texas created and passed their own age verification law. They were the second state, I believe, to start this process up after the good folks in Louisiana actually were the initial kind of I don't know what you want to call it, the wonderful people that brought this mess back from the dead. So Texas had theirs, the Free Speech Coalition, which had a bunch of plaintiffs, which was a coalition of a lot of different websites and platforms in the adult entertainment industry, including ILO, formerly MindGeek, Paper Street Media, and various other plaintiffs. They filed a lawsuit against the Attorney General of Texas, Attorney General Paxton, in order to stop this law as it being unconstitutional. They went to court in Texas, and at the lower Texas level, they ultimately got a favorable decision, and the federal judge at the Texas court trial level placed an injunction stopping the law. The state of Texas appealed. They went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and unfortunately, there we sustained a loss, and the Fifth Circuit reversed the decision of the Texas lower court and ultimately eliminated what was the injunction. Following that, the Free Speech Coalition filed a appeal to the United States Supreme Court. This was not an appeal of right. We had to actually ask for permission to the Supreme Court and get the Supreme Court to take the case via what's known as a writ. I was involved in that process and wrote a brief in support of that position as well. The Supreme Court granted our request and agreed to hear the case. We then briefed the case, orally argued the case, and had patiently been waiting for the Supreme Court to rule. And ultimately, as a lot of you already know, last week we got a very unfortunate ruling in which the Supreme Court sided with Texas in essence, even though they kind of went their own way. They didn't give Texas what they wanted, which was a rational basis review of the law. The Supreme Court ultimately came up with intermediate scrutiny test. The end result was the same, though, and unfortunately now, not only are we stuck with Texas's age verification law, the Supreme Court has created a pretty clear path for all of the other states where there's pending challenges for similar laws.
Okay, and so this to go all even back a step further, because I literally got into a Twitter beef a few nights ago when this decision came out. I made a tweet about it, and there was someone in the comments that was saying like age verification is so necessary. We don't want content in front of my like they didn't understand why age verification is a lovely name we package these things in that is so misleading in terms of how this plays out in reality and what it properly looks like. Like, of course, we don't want minors accessing adult content. That's not anything that's up for debate. The problem with this proposed way of doing it with age, IDing adults accessing adult material is that there's a million problems with it. One of the main which it's not effective. So if you could just run through why age verification is bad policy to start, because I just want to make sure anyone that comes across this episode on our podcast or is listening live really knows and understands and can go confidently into conversations being able to talk on the subject and communicate why it's not useful policy.
Yeah, and you hit it straight on. And the first thing to mention is that, listen, I've been in the adult entertainment industry for 20 years now, and I am fully supportive of every cause that has come into existence in order to protect children. Responsible content creators, platforms are not interested in having children view this content, plain and simple. And so let's just get that out of the way. I am not a forget the children type guy. The problem is, though, that's not what this is really about. And that's the real issue here. The real issue is that ultimately the way these age verification laws work is that any person, regardless of age, doesn't matter. It could be someone that just turned 18. It can be someone that's 72. Hell, it can be someone that's 87 years old. It doesn't make a difference. If one of those people are trying to access a website that contains, quote, material that may be harmful to minors, end quote, they are now going to have to go through a age verification process whereby before they can access the content, they have to submit their government ID to either the website itself or to some third-party platform that they won't know who it is, for them to verify that the person is in fact 18 years of age. So in essence, what the user has to do is, before the user can go and look and watch the content that is, keep in mind, constitutionally protected content. We're not talking about obscenity here. We're not talking about content that isn't lawful. We're talking about legal adult entertainment. Before they can do that now, they've got to notify either a third party or the website who they are, what their age is, information from their, from their government ID, to be able to look at what it is they want to look at, to be able to, express themselves before they want to express yourself. So ultimately, it's a complete trampling on everyone's First Amendment rights, privacy rights, and the list goes on.
Yeah, and to like bullet point this, any kid these days knows how to use a VPN. So they can go around these state by state, age verification laws by logging in from a VPN that is in a state that doesn't have one of these laws. So right out the gate, not effective. If the real concern is children accessing adult content, it is not an effective way to do that. We have device locks, we have other routes, we have parenting, we have all of these other things. You can, coordinate your Wi-Fi so you can access certain sites. You can do a lot of things before this is even proposed as an alternative. In one, because it's not a real alternative, it's not effective whatsoever. And then you have the other risks that come with someone who's an adult accessing online content but giving up their privacy and their ID to do it. Like when you're mentioning these other third-party sites, this becomes a really fundamental part of the equation because these sites have your data, they have your information. We know data leaks happen all of the time. And do you really want your ID attached to what you search for in terms of online content? Like a lot of people aren't going to want to make that association, and therefore a lot of people are not going to be open to ID verifying. So the next part that I want to make sure I drive home to the creators listening is that the people looking for adult content that don't want to scan their ID, it's just because it's a hassle, because it's in another room, and they don't want it attached to what they're searching for. They're not going to not get to adult content. They're just going to not go to the reputable sites that have to abide by these AV laws. So that traffic then just goes to other sites hosted outside the US doing God knows what, unethically uploading content, most of which are leaks of adult creators, much of which are like tube sites, and also a lot of content that's properly illegal, not legal adult content. So the traffic goes somewhere and it's going to worse places, which then, as a byproduct, exploits more people that didn't want their content uploaded to that site that doesn't ethically do so. So there's all of this fallout that's going to happen, and it's going to reshape the adult industry as we know it. And I want to make sure everyone that listens to today's conversation, as we kind of go forward and then talk about the ruling and then talk about how this might shake out, knows that going into it. It's not an effective law. There's too many ways around it. It, in effect, is adding to exploitation and harm to other people, because all the content and traffic goes somewhere. And also, there's a real reality that we're crossing a line and we're going into where things before this ruling and things after this ruling are going to be completely different. Um, and we all raised the flags. We were all screaming as, canaries in the coal mine, and there wasn't enough activity, even from our own community, to really drive change. And I think that's really the loss here is we didn't activate hard enough on some fronts, and then also in terms of what we were able to do, it wasn't a success this time. And then that's just how it shook out. So now, as we kind of go forward, I want to talk about what happened with the Supreme Court ruling. I want you to kind of summarize going in, fighting this fight, what occurred, and what were like the big moments that ended up leading us to this ruling.
Well, ultimately, it comes down to the fact that First Amendment challenges, where you have a government that has passed a law that is somehow going to affect free speech. What has historically happened is that when you have a content-based law, such as age verification, historically, the level of scrutiny that has to be tested for that law is called strict scrutiny. It's the highest level of scrutiny. It's supposed to be that the government took the absolute most least restrictive means to put their law in effect. Texas argued that the test that should have been used is rational basis, which is basically the weakest level of scrutiny that you would test a law, strict scrutiny being the highest. And ultimately, even though neither Texas asked for intermediate scrutiny, nor obviously did we, because our position was always that we were asking for strict scrutiny to be applied. The Supreme Court, out of their own ass, and yes, I'm saying out of their own ass because that is the reality of what happened, is they pulled out intermediate scrutiny, which had been recently used in the TikTok case. And they used intermediate scrutiny, which ultimately, and on top of that, ultimately said that, yep, Texas's law passes intermediate scrutiny. And so the Supreme Court, in essence, ruled in Texas's favor. And now we have a Supreme Court ruling that paves the way for age verification laws that are similar across the United States. So, unfortunately, this was a situation where the Supreme Court did not do what they normally do, because of the fact that this was a case involving pornography. And ultimately, I believe that if this was a different subject line, they very well might have stuck to what has always been Hornbook law for these sorts of issues, which was strict scrutiny. But they saw adult entertainment and they basically gave us special treatment, but it wasn't special treatment in a good way. It was special treatment in a bad way. And when you read the dissenting, if you read the dissenting opinions that Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson authored, you'll see that they even send a warning to the rest of the Supreme Court that this is the wrong decision. This goes in a completely different direction and opens up all sorts of issues. But the way the Supreme Court is made up right now is 6-3 in terms of having 6 conservatives versus 3 liberals, and that's how they voted. They voted basically party lines, which is not what I anticipated they would do for a First Amendment battle of this magnitude. And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we got the loss.
Can you help me define and understand the difference between strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny?
Well, again, so strict scrutiny is when you're analyzing the law, the government had to have used the most least, like the government had to do everything possible to make sure that before they pass a law, there was no other way they could have done it that it would have been less impactful on a person's on a person's First Amendment rights.
So, like
Intermediate,
the least, like, are there no other better alternatives first?
exactly, and ultimately they applied intermediate scrutiny, which is kind of in between rational basis that Texas was asking for, and then strict scrutiny, which is what Look, I'm a lawyer, and I've been studying constitutional law my entire career. The Supreme Court got this completely wrong. I don't know how many, different ways I can say it. Obviously, I'm disappointed, but they got it wrong. And unfortunately, this is a situation where, contrary to what should have happened, we got caught up in conservative politics. And despite the fact that the Supreme Court is not supposed to, you know, go in that direction of politics, unfortunately, that's what happened. And they made very much the wrong decision. But we are where we are now, and as much as I think they got it wrong, and and I like to think I'm smarter than them. They're the Supreme Court. I'm not, and
And here we are.
here we are. And it's Friday was a very dark day. Friday was a very dark day. It was very disappointing because I very much, I've been fighting for the First Amendment my entire career, and I feel like I was betrayed, and betrayed by the judicial system. And those are very harsh words that I'm speaking, but I have that right, and I'm going to express myself and tell you that I think we got stomped on here. But the fact is that now the adult entertainment industry and all of your amazing listeners need to adapt, and they need to start realizing that no matter how much we hate the decision or no matter how much we disagree with it, it's here now, we're stuck with it, and we have to adapt.
Yeah. Now, we have other laws, other states outside of Texas, that are trying to pass these same kind of age verification laws. How many? Is it 21?
I think there's 18, but every day I try to keep up with the count, and every day it changes. But this decision, what it's going to do is it's going to do two things. The first thing is that, unfortunately, a lot of the other challenges that are out there against the other state laws are now going to go away because of this Supreme Court decision. There really isn't a very good path to winning those cases. So I suspect that you're going to start seeing those cases getting dismissed, unfortunately. And then on the second note, what this case is going to do, it's going to embolden some other states that have been waiting. They wanted to wait to see what the Supreme Court had to say about this before passing their own laws. So now I do anticipate there's going to be more, and probably a lot more.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
It's so sad. So knowing that this is coming, and this is what we were really afraid of, and that's why the Supreme Court case was so significant and important, was because we know we have all these other states kind of looming offstage, waiting to see how this pans out so that they can go ahead now and move forward with theirs, because they know there won't be that objection. Like, we can't run it up to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
So from your perspective, is this decision kind of going to set the new standard of how adult content is treated legally? Like, that's how it feels.
It might feel like that, but no, that's a little bit of a stretch. It's not going to. The Supreme Court ruled on the age verification case. It did not rule on pornography specifically. The Supreme Court didn't go too far and start saying, things like, well, this sort of content is now legal or illegal. That's not what the case was about. But the problem is that the Supreme Court pretty much showed that they looked at us from a First Amendment perspective as second-class citizens. And again, I know that sounds harsh, because I believe if we weren't the adult industry and we were a different industry like larger social media companies, I think the Supreme Court would have actually ruled differently. But unfortunately, they looked down on us as an adult industry, and that was inappropriate. It doesn't change, what content is legal versus illegal to that nature, but they did also, in my opinion, send a message to the adult industry that basically said, don't come back in front of this Supreme Court with any, cases revolving around adult entertainment, because you're not going to get a very good result from this Supreme Court. And so it was a dark day. It was a dark day, and it really was a very unfortunate decision. But, this is something that I always tell people in the adult entertainment industry. Now, a lot of, people that are here today listening to this, or listening to it later when they're listening to it on, recorded or what have you, a lot of you weren't around in the industry 20 years ago and weren't around for the original 2257 constitutional fight. And a lot of people have the tendency to take the position, well, this is it, this is the end. The adult entertainment industry has been under attack since it started. Okay. That is never going to change. As much as all the people here know that adult entertainment is one of the most incredible ways of expressing your free speech rights, that the fact is that there's always going to be those people that aren't going to like it, whether they're in a church group, whether they're from a conservative base, whether it's from a political base, whatever the hell it is, or they're just whacked out of their mind. They got nothing better to do, and so they want to, attack us. That's going to exist forever. That is not going to change. If you think that this is going to be the last time that we get some sort of crazy law popping up that the industry is going to have to, fight back on, you're crazy. It's going to happen again. I'm telling you all right now, this is not the end of it. This is a war that is going to go on well past I'm, out of this industry, dead, well past most of you guys are, have wonderful, lifetimes. But the fact is that this war is going to go on forever. And the industry has persevered. The industry has continuously, despite what government and Big Brother has tried to do, we continue to exist. We continue to persevere. Adult entertainment is still a $2.2 billion per year industry. That is not going to disappear overnight because of this. Are things going to get challenging coming up? Yes, they are. Is it going to be harder, for performers to make money? Yes, I do believe that we are entering into an era where, at least for the short term, things are going to get tougher. But are we going away, or is this the end, or anything to that nature? Absolutely not. I refuse to accept that. I refuse to ignore the century plus work that people before us in this industry have done fighting for us and will continue to fight for us. So dark day, but I am not going to take the position that this is the end or anything even close to that. No way.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of creators don't realize, and this doesn't get talked about as much, but that there's actually a huge cost to age verifying each user that comes to the site. If I was trying to research, it was like 25 cents to 60 cents per age verification. I don't know if that's accurate, but that cost for adult sites, especially the smaller indie sites, like maybe like the stuff that serves a niche audience or whatever, that huge new added cost will put those sites out of business.
For smaller sites, Mel, it is going to be a gigantic problem. And that's why, I've been continuing to try to work with clients to, get them prepared for this and so forth. It is a astronomical cost for some platforms that can't.
Mhm.
And of course, as money always does, we all know the money flows downhill, and ultimately the platforms are going to have to make up for this somewhere. The users are going to have to make up for this somewhere, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, that means that the performers are going to suffer also. The performers are going to have money coming out of their pocket because of this.
Mhm.
And that's the unfortunate part. But I would also tell you that adult entertainment consumers are very smart. They are not just going to go away. They're not going to tomorrow now say, okay, that's it. Because of this, we're just going to give up. Someone that wants access to adult entertainment, even if it becomes a little bit more challenging, they are going to find ways to get their adult entertainment. Unfortunately, though, now they have to do so with giving up, at least here in the U.S. now, a considerable amount of their privacy rights and a considerable amount more of their free speech. I don't believe that it's government's business to know what I'm watching, what I'm reading, and I think it's a disgrace that the Supreme Court did this. And my words are harsh, and I know there's a lot of people listening right now, and I don't want anyone to misinterpret this as me saying I'm anti this or anti that. No, I'm anti Big Brother telling us what to do. I'm pro First Amendment. I'm pro free speech. I want everyone here to be able to make a living under the powers and protection of the Constitution they're supposed to have, not this kind of crazy right wing nonsense that we got going on right now.
Hmm. Hmm. And this, like, aside from the cost that these sites have to take on to age verify, and a lot of sites, this is really going to thin the herd, to your point, because those little sites, they're not going to make it. That's a huge cost.
Forget about the little sites. Think about this, Mel, and think about the free sites. Now, a lot of you, know what free sites are. Ultimately, free sites are out there to generate traffic to then ultimately push to a pay site. Those free sites are. This is going to hammer them. This is a major blow for the free sites.
Yeah, because the free sites, well, they can't be free anymore.
Well, it's
I
also it's a
mean,
major blow to everyone that's here. I mean, listen, if you a lot of you who are I see all the names you've got Mel, you've got some really big names in here right now who have huge presences on all the major platforms like OnlyFans and Loyal Fans and the list goes on. And a lot of the people that are here today, they have link trees or they have their own mini sites that have culminations of their content, not as for sale, but for just as a means to push people to their paid content. Those individuals who are actively running those sites are now in the same category as everyone else. They're going to have to implement age verification. And that is going to make it very difficult, if not impossible, for a lot of performers to do that. So,
yeah.
for the individual performer and the smaller, performers using free sites and free content, it's going to there's some bumpy roads ahead.
Yeah, the smaller performers that like might have their own pay site, for example, this ruling directly applies to you because you're hosting an adult content website, and there's fines per user per day they access your site if you don't have age verification up and you're accessible in one of these states. Like, can you tell us like what the fines are? Because I when I read that, it was astronomical to me. I was blown away.
Oh, it could be. I mean, it depending on how many people access your site. By the time they pile all the fines on, it could be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. there's no question that the ammunition is there for these states to hit very, very hard. And again, you have to look at each different state, Mel, because each state has some nuances in their law. You still have some really crazy states out there, like Tennessee, for example, that has a criminal component to the law. In this case, it's not about money; it's about you could potentially be put in jail for for doing this. And it's a little bit of a side issue, but that's why the Tennessee case, that fight is going to go on. I don't anticipate that being one of the cases that goes away, but the money can be astronomical. And so, individuals right now who are solo performers or really monetizing the I don't want to single out any particular site, but the sites like OnlyFans, Loyal Fans, Fansly, and the list goes on. You know, a lot of people had been very much relying on free content and their own individual free sites to push traffic to those. They're going to have to, either implement age verification or they're going to have to change their strategies. And they're going to have to do it now because the Texas case is done. It's done. The Supreme Court has ruled. So there's immediate changes that people are going to have to make.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I talked about in my video because I'm in Tennessee. I'm in the law or in the state that is trying to criminalize anyone for distributing adult content on top of AV. And so this is why this topic, I mean, it just hits home so much for me and it's so scary and relevant to me. The other thing I want to talk about is kind of just how this really looks because myself, I'm seeing this. I don't host my own pay site, so I don't have to geo-block certain states or I don't have to do or take on the cost of AV or perform AV. A lot of the creators listening, they're on fan sites who are going to have to, take on this burden, or they're on clip stores that are going to have to take on this burden. A lot of the creators listening aren't running their own adult sites. So for them, they could be sitting there thinking, this really doesn't apply to me. Like, I understand it's scary and bad for the industry, but this doesn't impact me. And I want to make sure everyone that listens to this understands how it actually does. The big thing that comes up for me is that I don't know as a creator, does this apply to something like Twitter, where I've posted adult content and I obviously don't age verify because it's allowed on Twitter? Does this apply to Reddit, where I've posted content and obviously I don't age verify? Like, how does that look?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's going to come down to a state by state basis. So, for example, most states have a test in place where the website has to be at least 1/3 adult content. So, the question is Twitter, Reddit, and the other sites you just mentioned at least 1/3 adult content? The answer to that question is probably no. It's a lot, but in terms of their total content of everything, is it past a third? Probably not, and so they won't fall into the laws. So for the content that you're posting on, it's funny, we all still call it Twitter, X, excuse me, or Blue Sky, or wherever you're posting now. For all of those platforms, ultimately, it's a pretty safe bet that you're not going to have an issue there. You're not going to see too much of a change. In fact, some would argue that you're going to see a lot of people racing back to social media to be looking for content because it'll be easier to get content and avoid age verification on social media. So that's a little bit of the glass half full view of it. But ultimately, no, you're not. Twitter's not going to have to comply. Reddit's not going to have to comply. The totality of their content doesn't exceed the 1/3 threshold. It's going to be the individuals that are running sites, specifically, that are just filled with their own content. That those are going to be the ones. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the definition that they have is they call it material potentially harmful to minors. Well, what the fuck does that even mean? Because that could be pictures, videos, it could be text, it could be stories, it could be products, it could be 100 different things. And everyone's going to have to wait and see where the I don't want any of you who are listening today, I don't want any of you to be a you know a target of the government or any state or anything like that. But unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say, what the next chapter of this story is going to be is, now that the Supreme Court ruled, we are going to see the states ramp up their efforts. That is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because in the cloaked attempt of saving children, and protecting minors from content, we are now more incentivized to freely promote content on a platform like Twitter that more minors can access.
It is, again, this is the broken rationale of a lot of these fucking, I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear. A lot of these
No, go
a
for it.
lot of the a lot of these talking heads in Washington. And I'm going to give you the perfect example. For those of you that know what FOSTA SESTA is, when the government came up with this incredible notion that they're going to try to stop human trafficking and protect children again, and so they're going to make every person that operates an escort site or a dating site or anything that involves any sort of, sexual service or personal ads, they're going to make it illegal. And the government ran around and they were telling everyone that this is going to make it safer for sex workers, that our first and most important concern was sex workers. That is such a load of bullshit. Because if you actually talk, Mel, to people in law enforcement, you will find out that since FOSTA SESTA has come out, more performers have gone back to organized crime, violent situations, gangs, pimps, and the list goes on, because you have removed the third party platforms that actually were providing a service and creating some level of safety between a consumer and a potential person. So they thought they were being so wonderful and witty and, it was great for everyone, but it didn't. And if you talk to law enforcement, they're going to tell you that it didn't. This is the same thing with age verification. Once again, the government is saying, okay, well, now that we have the Supreme Court ruling on this issue, children are going to be safer now because age verification can be mandated in law. Okay, fine. Well, here's a funny story for you. And now I'm really going to blow your minds. Okay. Recently, we started seeing in some different states the civil attorneys get in on the action because they want to go after with these personal injury lawyers. It's time to get in the money game. So they started suing a bunch of platforms alleging violations of the age verification laws. Blah blah blah. In one of the instances, if you and I'm not going to go into specifics because it's an active case. I'm involved in it. I don't want to go too over the ledge here, but you're going to see in the allegations and in the response that the response is going to say, "Hey, people complaining, guess what? We did have age verification on, and your kids still found a way around it," which goes right into the argument that we were making that this doesn't work anyway. Kids aren't stupid. They're going to find their way. The right way starts with parenting. The right way starts with people that are supposed to be responsible for their children. I make no secret that, I'm a dad. I have a I don't think she's at teenage age yet, but I have a daughter who's in that adolescent age now. And I'm going to tell you right now, she has an iPhone. And on that iPhone, she can't do shit without me approving the app she wants to download. She can't send a text message without me and my spouse being able to review what she sends, and we monitor what she's doing. That's called responsible parenting. That's how you deal with keeping minors away from the stuff. So to suggest that this is going to make things better, it's not going to make things better, because what we're going to see in these civil lawsuits is that some of these sites already had age verification, and guess what? It didn't work. Surprise, surprise. Just like we've been arguing this entire time. So I don't want to go too far over the cliff here, because if you get me going, I'm already starting to get a little angry about this again. I spent a lot of meditation over this past weekend, calming myself down. And I don't want to I don't want to blow my mind here again, but again, like, for those of you that are listening to this, and you're a parent and you're just letting your kid run free realm on their electronic devices, well, shame on you. Big brother government isn't the one that's supposed to be coming in and telling us how to parent. And and the hardware exists. The other tools that already exist, the blocking tools that exist, are already there. The major service provider Xfinity, I don't know how many you know what they are. It used to be Comcast, now it's Xfinity. You can call them and you can put blocks. I mean, there are so many other options that are better than this stupid notion that, AV is going to be, this is the way to do it. They're wrong. It's not going to help. It's going to make things worse. You want to force kids to learn about the dark web earlier? Well, guess what? This is going to make kids learn about the dark web earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The when you said earlier, like, that this isn't going to affect like a Twitter or a Reddit, for example. You said something about how it comes down to if the website is, what did you say, 1/3 adult content or?
Yeah, most of the states have a threshold where you have to establish that the platform is 1/3 adult content.
Okay, and so like the link trees of the world or the beacons of the world, some of them have the ability to like when you go to your link tree, there's also a photo of you. And given it has to be safe for work or suggestive, but it's not adult, what about things like those? Because given I don't think they would meet that threshold of the 1/3, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
No,
I guess the bigger question is like what qualifies as adult content?
well, that's the issue. That would come, and it's not adult content that's really the test. It's content that's potentially harmful to minors, and that would be up for to a judge or jury to decide. But ultimately, what we've now been doing, and I've been doing this for a while, getting my clients ready for this, was we've been going through. My office goes through our clients' link trees and sites and stuff, and we go through it together, and we come up with content that we believe we would have the best argument to make to a court or jury saying this is not adult content. This is, no worse than what you see in a Victoria's Secret ad, which interestingly enough, by the way, I would like to tell you that in recent weeks and months, I have learned that the Victoria's Secret online website has more triple X rated shit than some of the actual triple X content I've seen. It's a little bit of a,
That's wild.
it's a little bit of a joke, and I'm being a little facetious, but ultimately it's true. And so what people have to understand is that, they're you have to be very selective of, if you are in control of your own site, what you're putting up there. And it comes down to, what would a judge or jury think? Where is that judge or jury located? Because of course, as we all know, a judge and jury sitting in Louisiana is going to have a very different opinion than a jury or judge that's sitting in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
it's, it's not black and white. It's not easy. So it's one of the reasons why everyone has a lot of work to do right now.
Yeah. So I want to summarize up until this point, and then I want to go into really how this could look for creators, independent creators. 'Cause I really want, like I said, I want the people that listen to this episode to understand what to expect and also how to prepare. So why this kind of matters is that, they held up that only incidentally burdens adult speech, so that this law was allowed to pass, and that's going to fast track copy and paste bills in a lot of other states. The other piece of this is that Pornhub and a dozen of other tube sites, free sites hosting content, are going to pull out of those states that are doing age verification because it increases their cost tremendously and it increases their liability. And these are some of the biggest sites in the world. Think of their traffic numbers, think of their new cost, and those sites don't inherently make revenue except for advertising and things like that. And then that's going to make smaller kind of like state walled gardens start to appear where certain states, like a quilt work can access adult sites and certain can't. And then the VPN thing kind of comes into play. And then you can expect that like these non-compliant companies in these states are going to take on huge fines, huge burdens of cost. The smaller studios or like platforms in terms of studios or like the giant platforms like the fan sites, things like that, they might take on some of this burden for the average adult creator. But those free sites and those traffic sites that are so, important to the ecosystem most independent creators build is going to be completely transformed. And then there's also obviously the privacy concerns. You're putting your ID on the internet, and that doesn't come without privacy concerns. So to summarize all of that, and also just it's not effective, guys. So I think that point has been driven home, hopefully by now. But we want to go into how this really kind of shakes down for the independent adult creator. So the first thing, obviously, we talked about already is if you have an adult site yourself, if you're hosting your own, melrosemichaels.com that has content on it, you either have to geofence these states to make sure or pull out of these states where these age verification laws are, or you have to age verify in those states, take on that cost yourself, and make sure you're compliant. The other part of this is that when it
Take down all of your adult content and just have a PG site.
PG saying, okay, or like put it behind a paywall, right? Like something like a fan site or something of that nature that's going to take on that burden for you,
Or
more or less.
yes.
Right, right. And the other piece of this that I think is interesting is like how I imagine this actually turns out. So in the last I would say 6 months especially. And I know creators in our community have felt this as well because we talk about it inside, the CEO Society, our closed private community for adult creators. We've seen a traffic drop, a huge traffic drop already. And when I say that, you have to think we're seeing this traffic drop from states like Texas where um, ALO or where Pornhub's already pulled out. We're seeing this traffic drop come from these certain geos where AV is already present. So the one like very obvious change that I think creators should prepare for and expect is to see another huge drop in traffic as these AV laws go into place because more states means more traffic being walled off means it's going to be harder to access your fan base and get those clicks to convert because you're going to be harder to find. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be, each time a state rolls it out, there's going to be a decrease in traffic, which in turn turns into decrease in revenue. So yes, I do agree with that at least in the short term, that is going to happen.
Yeah. And so for me as a creator thinking about, a sales funnel, the top of funnel marketing that I'm going to have to do to make up for the verified user, the age verified user drop off while also losing lifetime value on that customer. Because for me, I'll have to market harder to a broader people, which is hard enough to get like a fucking TikTok or a reel to go viral as it is. But you're going to have to go harder in marketing because fewer people are going to make it further down that funnel and scan their ID. So like, I think that's my immediate concern that I kind of predict for
Yep.
this. And then also just the fact that users are going to likely look for free content more, just not on the usual sites, not on the usual suspects. The Pornhubs of the world won't be where they go. They're going to look on the, weird Russian domain.com of the world. And the way that I see that playing out is that creators should be prepared for more leaked and stolen content and that getting your traffic versus coming through to your paywalls. I think that when we make this secondary market stronger for piracy because people don't want to scan their ID, so they're just going to go to other unethical sites where they don't have to do that, the risk for creators to have leaked and pirated content being a hotter commodity and getting more traffic, I mean, that hurts our sales. Like every leaked video is eating revenue out of your pocket where someone that wants to watch you isn't going to pay for it because they can find it online free. Do you think that that's a safe kind of prediction as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I mean, yes. I mean, I can't really, I can't really say anything other than agreeing with you because I think you're spot on. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, the government seems to think that this is going to make things better and this is what's going to protect children. It's not. And it's not, and it's going to hurt everybody. You used a great word, Mel, that I hadn't used before, and you called it like kind of like our ecosystem, and that's actually a really good word to use because this is going to trickle down and screw up everything across the ecosystem. I actually really like that. Content piracy has been out of control for years. Content piracy is one of those things where, I can't tell you how much of each day at my office dealing with content piracy issues, and that's not going to change. Unfortunately, it's, this very much, as you said, could make things worse.
Yeah, those are the things that immediately kind of came up for me when I was like trying to process and think through this. Like, okay, what does this look like for me as a creator? Traffic drop off, increase in piracy, both those things massively affect our bottom lines in terms of the earnings and revenue we make. I know creators have been struggling at least for 6 months in general with revenue and traffic. So I'm fundamentally scared about that. But on the other side, I'm thinking that the people that make it through age verification to a fan site platform, for example, that get behind a paywall, they're going to be highly qualified. So that's the kind of the only silver lining I can pull from this is that they're going through a lot of trouble to access you and to DM you and have access to your content at that point. So if they're going through that much trouble, they're probably a much more qualified user. So the other, if the creators that are listening into this, something else I would maybe advise aside from, repositioning your marketing efforts and really taking seriously a DMCA service, which shout out to Certas at DMCA. They're the best that there is, and this isn't sponsored, but besides those two things, the other thing is when you get those users through your paywall and they're DMing you, it's time to really turn on the charm, because those are going to be qualified users. They're not going to be the freeloaders that just happen to be popping in. They're going to be making some effort to get to your platform, to get behind that paywall. So almost the way we interact as a point of contact with users, I think, should be taken a little bit more intentionally too. That's another thing that comes to mind for me. But those are the immediate things where I'm like, okay, this is what this is going to look like for me, the independent creator who doesn't run their own site, who doesn't actually have to age verify or take on that cost, but it still affects the revenue. So that's kind of the way I'm mapping this in my head. And those are some of the things I would advise for creators if they're really, running their businesses like businesses. These are the things that I think we should be looking out for in the immediate future.
Your users should all be treated like bars of gold. You are to cherish them, protect them, secure them, do whatever you got to do to make sure that you're absolutely protecting them like the most valuable asset in the world, because they are. Your paying users are going to be insanely valuable. I've heard some people, Mel, kicking around the idea that we're just now, because of this, we're going to start raising our prices right now, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if that's the greatest idea in the world. This take it in stride. The one thing that I always tell my clients is, when you start acting emotionally, that's actually when you make your biggest mistakes. And now is the time to be digesting all this information. The point of me coming on your show today, Mel, isn't like, I'm not here to make people think this is the end of the industry, go start applying for, for jobs in the mainstream, whatever. That's not it at all. I believe the industry we will continue to thrive as we have throughout history, but it is going to be a bumpy road. There are things that you have to do now to get ready for what our new world is going to be. And you can do one of two things. You can either, stick your head in the sand to pretend that's not reality, and those people I do believe are going to be left behind. Or you can be proactive, deal with it, and move forward with your business. I can assure you that the people that are here today and that are listening to this recorded, you guys are some of the most brilliant internet entrepreneurs I have ever come across my entire life. You guys will continue to thrive. You will continue to make money. It's going to be a little harder. It's going to be a little bit bumpier. But I am convinced that, everyone is going to survive. This is not I refuse to turn this into, this is the end of the world type thing. I know there's a lot of that going on right now, and I don't think that's healthy for anybody.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to clarify too. I don't like what's happening. I think it's going to reshape the landscape. I think, like we said earlier, like the ecosystem will change. We'll have to do things differently. We should be prepared. We should be informed. Also, the clickbait title of this Twitter space, "We Lost the War on Porn," was completely intentional, because I'm not above clickbaiting all of you to listen and get informed. I find it is a responsibility. So I just want to kind of start to wrap this on the note that, like, no, the war is not lost, but it's really important that we're all keeping our thumb on the pulse and we understand what's going on. You're informed about it. You know how to articulate to other people who are less informed in a way that's going to be effective, in a way that's accurate. Like, I think these are some of the pieces and why these conversations in these spaces specifically are so important. And so, yeah, I want to clarify the title of the space too, because the sky is not falling, but it's staying up there by a thread.
You did, you did a really nice job, Mel, pulling people in with that title. There's a good lesson to be learned there.
We do have someone that wants to come up and ask a question. Corey, do you still have some more time? Is it okay to go like 10 over?
Mel, for your show, I've already learned a long time ago, if I say no to you, you're not going to give me a choice anyway. So
That's right. I just wanted to ask since we're live.
no, I appreciate you showing the love, even though I didn't have a choice, but I appreciate
Yeah, guys, Corey didn't even know we were the CEO squad. I've never met this man. I don't even think he's a lawyer. Anyways, Element, I'm going to bring you up. I'm going to give you the mic. Give me one sec. I'm going to add you as a speaker. Just make sure in the bottom left, you click to unmute your mic and you have the stage.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yeah. So something that's kind of fallen a little under the radar in the last couple of years is the state of Alabama, because Alabama is a particular state where you cannot access anything owned by MindGeek. When you X is anything like Pornhub, X Hamster. I don't remember what the third one was, but it doesn't matter. Basically, it tells you, hey, we're not your IP is from Alabama, and you can't access website. Boohoo sucks to be you unless you're a model, which in case you can log in. Now, I live in Alabama, specifically Huntsville, and I've been doing just fine in the last couple of years since they implemented this. Um, I've seen growth. In fact, 2025 has probably been the most successful year I've ever had since I started doing OnlyFans, and probably my entire career of the last 14 years. So don't take, like everyone is saying, like don't take this whole Supreme Court decision, as a reason to say, well, we're done. Just look at Alabama, because even though Alabama is starting to implement some more draconian policies that have flown completely under the radar, it's still worked out fine, at least in my situation. It's going to work out for you, trust me.
Well, so I would like to also add, because I'm in Tennessee. Tennessee has the same. We have the adult sites have pulled out. We have age verification in play as of now. Also, depending on how the rest of the Tennessee case shakes out, I'll be a fugitive, so that'll be fun, guys. I love orange. But the other part of that is that the audience accessing your site, the majority of your fan base, might not be from Alabama, so they might not be experiencing this. But although it makes it harder for you as a creator, like for me, a huge part of my fan base is not in Tennessee. So the drop offs I'm seeing are from other places. And then the other thing to be aware of, this is actually, you brought up a really good point. For the way that this will impact creators that I didn't consider until you said this, is that all of your stats are probably going to be lying to you to some degree, because the stats is saying, your fan base is this percent from the UK or this percent from the US or this percent from whatever. You might start to see that data skew because the VPNs are in use. So that's another consideration to make as far as how we could see this unfold. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the earnings potential is impacted more on where your demographic of fans lies versus as compared to where you are as the creator. And also, thanks for being brave and saying where you're at, because that's
Yeah, I love it's Element X. I think who just spoke, and I'm a huge fan now, huge fan. So God,
I appreciate it.
no man, God bless you. You keep doing what you're doing, and keep that attitude, because that's going to be the attitude that's going to keep you above all this shit, and frankly, it's going to keep you sane, which is important too.
Yeah. Yeah. But then the biggest thing is like they're seeing these direct impacts now, and you're thriving personally in this climate, which is amazing. And I hope that against all odds, what this actually ends up looking for creators is that more people, qualified people, go to your paywalls and spend money. And that could be what happens. There's a likelihood that that could actually be good for the independent performer, not great for tube sites, not great for free content sites. But you know what? When we have these big shifts in play, it shakes out how it does, and things fall where they may, and we're a resilient fucking group, and we navigate. So ultimately, the real loss here, it's at the level of free speech. It's at the level of how skewed and not bipartisan our Supreme Court is. It's at the bigger level, but it will have impact for creators, and also just being informed. Like you're not directly super effective right now, but you're here, you're informed, you know what's going on, and you can articulate it to other people. Like that is a huge win. No matter how we look at this, that's what we gotta kind of walk away with it from, I think.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Element. Thank you for coming up. I appreciate it. That's great. I love the optimism. That's how I want to kind of like start to wrap this up, actually, because that's kind of where we need to, I think, end up leaving this space with, is like, there's hope. It's going to look different. We're going to navigate. This is what happened. Let's all stay informed so we don't have more steps backwards on future policy and stuff as it arises. Corey, is there anything else you think that we should mention, talk about, get into regarding the Supreme Court decision before we kind of do closing thoughts and wrap up?
My message to everyone here is the same. You're here because you're part of an incredibly strong community. And yes, did the industry lose on Friday? Yes, we did. It was a bad day. It was a crappy decision. I don't agree with what the Supreme Court did. I think it sets us back in terms of free speech rights. But this is not the end of the industry by any stretch. This is a time to be reminded that, you know what? I got to change a little bit. I got to clean up some stuff a little bit. and I got to be a little bit more conscientious of what some of these rules are around me. That's what people need to be taken away from today, not to be running away saying this is the end and, going to, apply for jobs at the mall or anything like that. That's not at all what I'm doing. I want you guys to realize that you're part of a great community, and and so don't. It's okay to be angry, and it's okay to be sad, because you should be. It was a shit decision, but this is not the end, not by any stretch.
Yeah. And Corey, for everyone that listened in today, where can they find you?
If you guys want to reach out to me, you can feel free to hit me up on either X or Blue Sky. My username is my adult attorney. That's the best way to find me. You guys can also find me online. Same thing. My website is myadultattorney.com. You can call me at my office. You can email me. All of my contact information is online. Feel free to reach out to me, anytime. I'm more than happy, to help you guys out. If anybody wants to reach out, you can send me, do they still call them DMs? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
still DMs.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can still, send me a DM, reach out anytime. Happy to help you guys out. If any of you are going through a really rough time right now, I encourage you guys to please be talking about it with other people in the community. You are not alone. Your emotions are real. It is totally okay that you're feeling angry, sad, confused. All of that is totally natural. Speak up. Don't just, don't sit in a dark room and keep it all in. That's the worst thing for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here again. I really appreciate it. I appreciate that we can always have you on to kind of help us navigate and help us understand what's going on. It's hugely important. It's really important what you do out there, but also what you're doing in here. So the legal landscape is shifting fast, and creators shouldn't be left to navigate it alone. So inside the CEO Society, our private, close community for adult creators, we are tracking these updates. We're sharing strategies. We're supporting each other like we always do. And we're figuring out what compliance, sustainability, and safety will look like in this new era. You do not have to wait for the next legal blow to get prepared. So if you want to join me at ceosociety.app, you can rest assured that you will always be there and find yourself in good company. Thank you guys for listening, CEO Squad, and I'll see you on the next one.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.